Fantasy managers, hello, and how good is it to be back? The Euros is finally over and it's full steam ahead for the Fantasy Premier League and Premier League season. So welcome back to the FPL Addicts Fantasy Football 2021 and 22 season, powered by Esports Live. Premier League is back, and so is your usual panel, the same as last season, with a couple of new faces popping up throughout the season as well. But firstly, what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that you are registered for the FPL Addicts Mini League. Our free Mini League code is 1KSRYW, and we have a paid mini now live at www.e-sportslive.com.au/FPL Addicts with huge prizes, and also our Discord server has a link there as well, so get involved. It's pretty international now. We were just talking before, there's a guy that joined today who's from Canada. We're all Australian. There's a Croatian, Dutch, it's everything. It's very multicultural in there, and it's a really good environment, good place to get all your tips and advice as well. So definitely get involved with that. But now it's time to introduce the panel today, the familiar faces from the Euros and from the FPL season. Last season, we've got Jack from Esports Live, Matt from FPL Addicts, Statman Dave, and my right-hand man, Ollie Walker-Peel. So we'll start with you, Ollie. How good is it to be back here with FPL, mate?
Quality. I mean, obviously the Euros was nice, wasn't it? But it's nothing like FPL. We're back where we belong. Should be amazing. Looking forward to a great season.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's nice to have a little bit of a break and a different style of fantasy football. But FPL's the one that we want to be playing all season long, isn't it?
It definitely is, and I think even for me, following a team outside the Premier League, it makes the Premier League as good as the league is. It adds that extra element to it that as a neutral, I obviously don't have following a team inside the Premier League, which obviously don't do. But being a neutral just adds that extra layer, and it's fun to play every year, and I'm looking forward to it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dave, we spoke about it on the last the Euro review podcast, but he's still in isolation, still considered one of the close contacts of someone. So how have you been trotting along? You've been just looking at Fantasy Premier League all day?
Certainly the last couple of hours I have been. I'm climbing the walls a little bit looking for something to do, but certainly working on the couch groove a fair bit. So, yeah, definitely was looking forward to getting this up tonight. So I had something to look forward to anyway. But yeah, other than that, feeling fine. So doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure someone that's probably been doing the same all day when he should have been working on his computer doing FPL is Matt, the guru from FPL Addicts. So how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Elliot. And yeah, you're right. I've pretty much been on Fantasy League all day, and just so much to look forward to with the season, and so many differentials to discuss, and I can't wait for it. So yeah, buzzing, absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, it's the cream of the crop. It's the main event, the one that we all know and love. So yeah, really can't wait to get into it as well. And the final one on the panel today is Jack. He's repping the new Man United kit. So he's all prepared for the season. He's ready for their third or fourth place finish, which is pretty inevitable. But how are you doing, Jack?
Yeah, very good, mate. And yeah, thanks for noticing the new jersey. Arrived this week, thanks to Ultra Football, who we've Esports have done a bit of work with previously. So they've looked after me. Feel a bit more excited now. Got the top. We're only a couple of weeks away, and obviously it's good to be back with all the panel as well. And it's me and the Guru were a bit lonely when we were in there last week on our own. So yeah, joining back with you boys is great, and we can chat a bit of FPL, get a few tips out there, a bit of advice, and yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone's draft teams, and hope you've all had a good holiday.
Yeah, just nitpick sort of little bits and pieces from everybody's team, get a little bit of advice. It's definitely true what you're saying there. And as you were saying, it's nice to be back. Ollie mentioned that it was nice to do the Euro Fantasy, but we all just love FPL so much here. So it's really the main event, the one that we want to be doing. So we won't waste any time, and we'll pretty much get right into it. We'll start with just a little bit of a fixture review if we bring up my share screen there. And obviously there is 10 fixtures for the first game, and you can't make subs mid-match day and stuff like that this time, so you've got to pick a little bit more carefully. There's no get all your Brentford and Arsenal assets in because they're playing on the first match day and all that sort of stuff, so you've got to pick carefully. But just sort of looking off the top of your head, Matt, I'm sure you've been looking tirelessly at the fixtures and the ratings on the FDR and everything, so is there any sort of game that pops out at you straight away?
Yeah, I think definitely that Norwich-Liverpool game. Liverpool's record against Norwich is ridiculous. Always scoring goals, and I think that's the one that's going to stand out for most FPL players, if not everyone.
Yeah, I remember 2 seasons ago, Norwich's last spell in the Premier League, it was game at Anfield, and if you had Mohamed Salah as your captain that day, there was an own goal. Origi was in on the action. It was pretty chaotic. I think it was 4-0 in the end to the Reds, so it's definitely a
4-1,
fixture to watch. Was it 4-1?
Timu Puki, you could be looking at on the other end, got a goal himself. So.
He did. I remember now. Yeah, well, if you're going to be looking at any Norwich players, he's probably one that's pretty high up there. And a lot of fantasy managers remember him for his hat-trick against from my team, Newcastle, which pains me to say. But
I remember that. I had him in my team.
It did happen. I remember sitting there watching it, baffled because I didn't have him in my team. So the damage was pretty severe that day. But that doesn't matter. It's changed this time round, and won't be conceding 3 to him at home this time. But Jack, we'll move on to you. And last time you and Matt were on the podcast by yourselves with just a little preview to the preview show, you were talking about fixtures. So is there any that stand out for you, do you think?
Yeah, listen, obviously United Leeds is going to be the first one after the displays of Calvin Phillips for Leeds and the season that Bamford had last year. I'm excited to see what Leeds can do and see if they can back it up. I'm looking forward to absolutely smashing them in that first game. So, United are going to have some exciting attacking threats with the likes of Sancho coming in. And obviously taking away kind of left off last couple of seasons with Bruno. So yeah, excited for United Leeds. I think it's going to be a cracking fixture, plenty of assets to have, and I'm sure plenty of managers going to have assets between the two teams.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's always a fairly open game. A lot of goals, quite traditionally, in recent years, definitely when they have faced up against each other, which albeit hasn't been too much considering Leeds' absence from the league. But last season, definitely I think was it 6-2 or was it 7-2 at home? It was.
I think we put a fair few goals in the back of that net, which was very, very satisfying. So yeah, looking forward to some of that again on the 14th.
Definitely want to be looking at some assets from that game for sure. But Ollie, we spoke a lot before we went live, and you're quite a fan of Crystal Palace this season. But one of the fixtures that I thought popped out for me was Chelsea Crystal Palace. But do you maybe think that this isn't one that people should be looking at for their Chelsea assets, or one that they should be looking at Palace assets for maybe?
I don't think Palace will do too well there. I was saying off air, I was absolutely waxing lyrical at the work that Palace have done, on the transfer front. I'm absolutely loving the signings that they've made with Michael Olise from Reading and Mark Guehi from Chelsea, actually, who was on loan at Swansea last season. So I don't think this is the game for them. If we do want to talk a little bit of Championship knowledge, I actually don't mind Brentford Arsenal as a game we could potentially look at, because I don't think Chelsea Palace is the one definitely for Palace assets. There might be something there for Chelsea, but I think Brentford Arsenal, there's a chance for assets from both sides. We're obviously joking off air on, how Matt had Nicola Pepe in his sort of draft team. I think he could even do something here. Obviously got the likes of Ivan Toney, who's come up from the Championship. He had 30 plus goals, 10 plus assists in the league last season, which is, unheard of. So I'd have a look at that one, really. Those first two opening games, obviously, Jack, you spoke about Man United Leeds. I think Brentford Arsenal's another one, especially Brentford. They've come up from the Championship. They want to prove themselves. First time they'll have a full lot of fans in their new stadium, or in a league game anyway, other than the playoffs. So be interested to see how they'll get behind the team. So I'll go there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brentford are a team that I think a lot of people have got not high expectations for, but think that they can probably play a free-flowing style of football and maybe trouble a couple of teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go this season. I think obviously you probably got a lot more insight than what most of us do, having watched them beat your team twice last season, and Ivan Toney bagging in all the goals. So
come off it. We drew with them away. Come off it.
A lot more prior experience to us for that, but yeah, definitely a team to watch for this season. But we'll go to you now, Dave, and obviously there's not too many standout fixtures left, but maybe a sort of differential pick of a fixture maybe that you've got. Is there any that sort of stick out for you?
Well, I was sort of agreeing with Ollie. I think the Brentford Arsenal one is certainly the most interesting one there. I think, certainly for FPL and even just for where Brentford sit in the league, Arsenal were mid-table last season and they haven't really made any big signings yet. So it could be a little test for Brentford to see whether any of their assets are going to be of value, I suppose, and if they're how competitive they're going to be. Whereas I think the other two promoted sides have got pretty tough fixtures first week. So it's probably, definitely a good one to look at Brentford and see where they sit.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of talk about Ivan Toney. If we just switch over to the teams now, Ollie, I think you've got him in your draft team, don't you? If we could bring that up on the screen, and you can maybe talk us through what you've sort of gone with for the season. But is he one Ivan Toney that you think is going to be, shooting right up to the Premier League this season? Displaying similar levels to what he did last season in the Championship?
Oh, he won't be bagging 30 plus goals again, I don't think. He's on my bench at the moment. I think by the time game week 1 rolls around, he'll be starting for me. I think he's one that even if he does start slow, he's going to burn you if you don't have him. Because obviously we had players last season that we gambled on, and they cost us eventually, didn't they? There was a lot of those players last year. I think Ivan Toney will be one of those. I'm not sure how he'll adapt to Premier League life. Sometimes you say obviously let players accustomed to Premier League football. I know obviously he was at Newcastle. I don't think he played in the Premier League while he was there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Elliot. No.
I believe so, mate.
So
a big impact.
Well, point withstanding, he doesn't have too much Premier League experience, so he might need time to adapt. But I think if there's one player you want coming up from the promoted sides, it's definitely Ivan Toney. You can see another one in there, Michael Elise. He's an incredible player for Reading last season. I think he'll do quite a lot. We saw what Eze did coming up from QPR, coming up from the Championship. A mid-table Championship side, or Reading were a little bit better than mid-table, but Championship player coming up to the Premier League. I think he'll do well as well. And then the rest of the team is just pretty common players. I think I don't have a player that we've not mentioned under 10% other than Joel Veltman. So they're really common players. So that's my one weakness, I think, not having too many differentials. But we'll have to see how that goes through the middle part of the season.
So Robert Sanchez, there's been a lot of on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. A lot of people have been, wondering if he's going to probably get the start for Brighton this season at his cheap price. I think a lot of fantasy managers have decided to go with him. But Brighton have signed a new keeper, 6'8", I believe he is one of the tallest players in Premier League history, if not the tallest. So do you have faith in Sanchez to start, do you think?
Yeah, Kjell Scherpen, we were looking at him off air, weren't we? We were saying, he's only made 2 appearances for Ajax last season. Well, if you go back, or 2 league appearances last season, if you go back to 2018-19 before his move, he was playing for Emmen in the Eredivisie and made 34 appearances. I think he was 19 at that point. So if you're making 34 appearances at 19, you've got to have something about you. So even if he's not had the game time at Ajax, he might well come in and at least jostle with Robert Sanchez for that number 1 spot. I'm still going to go with him because I don't think that Scherpen will start, but he's one to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, and do you think that Brighton are going to be, maybe not the best team this season, but a team that will surprise a couple of people, especially defensively? I think a lot of people had a lot of faith in them last season, and they didn't keep too many clean sheets, but I'd say they kept enough to warrant picking them in your team. But do you have a lot of faith in their defence this season?
Well, it depends how they respond to Ben White leaving the club. Obviously, they've got Tariq Lamptey coming back. He had a long injury spell out last season. I think he'll do brilliantly. We saw how well he played last season before his injury, so he'll help. But in terms of centre-half stocks, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to Ben White. They probably need to bring someone else in unless they want to go with Webster and Dan Burn. I've gone with the triple up initially. I don't like defensive triple ups. I usually go with a double up, but their fixtures to start the season are quite good. I think Brighton's, if you have a look at their first 5, they do have Everton, who I think they're rated as a 4 on the FDR. I think that's probably too high. I would have them as a 3, but Burnley, Watford, Everton, Brentford, Leicester, and then Palace in the first 6 isn't too bad. So that's why I've sort of loaded up there, but it just all depends on White.
Yeah, and obviously the midfield too of Fernandes and Salah, I think a bit going to be in a lot of people's teams. I think you'd be crazy to not at least have one of them. But just as an early observation, you've put Salah as your captain. Do you think he's the man to go for? Norwich away, start of the season. Do you think he's going to be ready to go?
Yeah, it's that Norwich game, isn't it? He's just brilliant against Norwich. To be fair, if we're being honest, every single time he plays Norwich, he scores. So that's the only reason. Fernandes, obviously, great player himself, and even Harry Kane up top. You can think about the captaincy. I haven't seen too many people who've got all 3, Salah, Fernandes, and Kane, but I wanted to go all 3 because they're brilliant players. See how they go, loading up in midfield and attack. So it might be a strategy that could cost me. Who knows? But in a draft, when we're making a draft team at the start of the season, it doesn't really matter too much.
Oh, absolutely, and it looks like a really, really nice first draft, mate. There's definitely a few players in there that I didn't even really look at that I'm gonna, maybe keep my eye on now. That Emi Buendia in midfield, I didn't really sort of think about him, but he's going to be one to watch, I think. And Elise, if you're raving about him, then he's got to have some sort of talent. So he's definitely going to be one to watch for the season as well. So it's a really nice teammate. But we'll move on to yours now, Jack. And you obviously were on the podcast with Matt before a couple of days ago, speaking about players that you thought you were going to get in. But if we look at your first draft team here, just sort of walk us through it, mate.
Yeah, it's similar to obviously what Ollie had with obviously Sanchez, looking at that option in goal. Great end to the season. Flat back four at the moment. I've gone for a 4-3-3. Gone Luke Shaw, obviously a massive fan of him, and obviously what a great Euros he's had. John Stones, same with him. With City, great asset to have in last year. I missed out on all the hype and all the points that he got in last year, so I thought he's a good option, still good value as well. And then Digne for Everton. Obviously, no idea what Rafa's going to do with this team, but presuming Digne is going to be flying as the bombing on as a left back. I know obviously Newcastle, you didn't have the players that he's got available to him now.
Matt Ritchie, mate, he was turned him into an absolute bowler of a left back, so he can probably work wonders with Digne.
Yeah, that's true. And then obviously Brucey took him to another new level, didn't he? So Digne's in there. And Target, who he featured pretty heavily in my team last year as well, so I've kept the faith. And obviously with Villa's first couple of fixtures there, they've got a good first three fixtures in there. Into midfield, I've got Jota in there at the minute. I've got to double up with Jota and Salah with the Liverpool assets, but not too sure. I was saying this to the Guru the other day. Even though Jota is great value, we know what he is capable of, but not too sure if he's going to be in that starting kind of lineup. But he's definitely going to come as a sub, probably at that 60th minute mark, if anything, and and pick up the points. Obviously, got Bruno in there as well. Got to have my United asset, and obviously we know how hard it is as well, getting all these big premium assets in your team this season. So yeah, Bruno's kind of stuck in there. United's fixtures. We were saying as well on the pod last week, if you listened, for the first, United's first lot of fixtures, are pretty decent. And then from week 14 to 27 are absolutely unbelievable. So I think having, you get United assets in there now and stick with them because, they're going to obviously only increase in value according to the FDR. Depends what United turns up. And then obviously drops Harry Kane at the start. I don't know if it's going to last or not, but Harry Kane's not made the team, and the front three just so can spread and bring in a few more better assets: Calvert-Lewin, Antonio, and Watkins, which is becoming a bit of a template, front three as well. And then gone for a couple of Brighton assets on the bench with Gilmore from Norwich and Gaeta from Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace. So yeah, not pretty happy with it at the moment. I'm definitely going to obviously play around with it, and Jota's probably going to be moving out, maybe a forward in and out. But I think at the moment I'm quite happy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with the Jota shout because it's difficult, to put your full faith in a player that you don't think is necessarily going to start. But he was just so good for Liverpool last season. Even off the bench, there was a couple of weeks where it was just goals and assists and everything. So he was really was an FPL manager's delight for that bit. So I think it's still a fairly safe bet to go with. Liverpool as well with Norwich. They've got a couple of good fixtures early on. So I think he's a good shout, mate. And you agree with Ollie then with the Salah as the captain and Bruno as your vice, do you think?
I think so. I'll stick with that for the moment. Norwich, how bad they were when they were in the Premier League, when they were in the other year. So I think, there's going to be goals in there. But then said again, obviously what we said earlier, United Leeds, there was plenty of goals in that last year. So it's going to be either or. It's definitely one of them two. So just go with the gut just before the game.
Yeah, and Matt Target, he was quite a surprising asset last season. He impressed a lot of people. Are you going to put your faith in him, do you think? That Villa have got, I think, 3 of their first fixtures are all green, and then after that it looks a bit south. But is he one that you probably maybe look to move on just for after the first couple of games, do you think?
Yeah, it depends how they go, because obviously we know how good Villa were defensively at the start. So if they can, last season, so if they can do something similar again this year, then there's no reason to shift him out. But Target, it looks great in there. It takes a few set pieces as well, doesn't he, from time to time, and depending if Grealish is going to still be there. But I think, with a left foot wand he's got, I'm a lefty, the Guru's lefty. We love, the special players. So, I want to fill that team with lefties in there. Let's give a shout out to Andy Ramskill as well, back in the UK. I used to do a bit of coaching with Andy. Hopefully he's going to be entering our fantasy competition this year. So Andy, if you're obviously still watching, get yourself in the league, mate.
it's got the more the merrier, mate. So you got to get involved. And you know, speaking of set pieces, Luca Digne probably be on a couple more set pieces as well next season by the looks of things. So it'll be an interesting one, and he's an asset that I think a lot of managers have gone with as well. So I'm not surprised to see him in both yours and Ollie's teams. But as I said with Ollie, it's a really nice template, and you know, a couple of players in there that I've got myself, and that I'll maybe be looking to get in my team as well. So it's a really nice first draft. But obviously, as we always say, it's subject to change. There's still a couple of weeks out from the season, so it's probably going to look nothing like this as when we get to game week 1, and we'll all wonder where it's gone wrong. But we'll move on to your team now, Matt. And as you were saying before, you've been on it all day, you know, just checking things, changing things, tweaking. So you know, sort of walk us through your team, mate.
Yeah, look, I've done the old, as Ollie would call it, Mike Bassett 4-4-2. Sort of pretty traditional, I think. You know, just it's kind of trying to fit these premiums in this year is quite tough because there's, you know, a lot of high price players. Harry Kane is high price. Obviously, he's not in my side at the moment, but yeah, starting from the goalkeeper, like everyone else, I've got Sanchez in there for now. Again, I'm considering Henderson. I'm surprised I've not seen Henderson from United in too many draft teams because he's only about 5 mil. I think he could be really good value, so I'm considering him. Maybe putting the extra into Martinez, but it's just if I can afford it. Going into defence, I've got Lamptey as well. I've put a bit of money into Chilwell and Alexander-Arnold. I think they've got a lot of potential, attacking potential early on as well and throughout the season, and I want to get them on them before there's any potential price rises. Fofana's in there at the moment, but I think he might go. I think I've said this to you the other day when I jack on our call. I don't think he's got the highest ceiling for points, but he's in there at the moment just purely based on the kind of the Twitter hype. And then moving into midfield, I've got Salah, who, you know, I think everyone's going to have. Got Pulisic in there. I'm really liking, you know, one of the Chelsea midfielders. He's a player that I really like to watch, and I've got a good feeling about him this season in fantasy league. Wasn't at his best last year, but the season before he ended quite well. And when he's fit, I think he's going to bang some goals in. Yeah, good player. And he's about 8 million, so I think it's a bit of a bargain. I've got Grealish in there. That's purely in case, you know, he does get the City move. Then I've got a City player in there already. Obviously subject to Pep Roulette, but yeah, I think if I'm going to pick a Villa player at the moment, it's going to be him. I was just thinking, again, last season was brilliant when he did play, and I think a lot of people forgot because he got the injury at the end. They've forgot how good he actually was in fantasy before the injury. And then obviously I got a bit of a random one in there, being a Spurs fan. Everyone's kind of frowning at this one. I've got Pepe in there at the moment, but again, this was my first draft I did when the app come out, and I based it on his form at the end of last season, and I kind of thought some of Arsenal's fixtures are quite good in the first sort of 7 or 8 games, and that he'll probably go. I've got 4.5 million in reserves, so whether or not he stays is probably unlikely. And then up front, I've got I'm on the Tony train. Got to be done. I think, you know, 30 goals in the Championship. It's, you know, a big ask to come back up to the Premier League, but I missed out on Bamford last season, and I want to try and get on Tony early. And you know, a bit worried if he does struggle and his price goes down because, you know, he's only 6.5 million and you will lose some value. But he's there, and then I know Elliot's going to be happy about this one. I've got Callum Wilson in there at the moment, and I think from that sort of 7.5 million range, he's probably my favourite choice at the moment for his penalties and just how good he was last year when he's fit. And then bench pretty standard. Ben Foster, Davis, and Gilmore for purely because they're cheap. I'm not too fussed about an expensive bench early on. And then I've got Stones there for now. Whether or not he comes in for Fofana or stays on the bench, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's a really nice teammate, and there's a couple of different players from what, you know, both Ollie and Jack had. You know, with the Chilwells, neither of Ollie and Jack went with Trent, which I thought was quite surprising as well. But he obviously is quite expensive. But I think it's a crime, mate. I don't think it's legal for you to not have your man Harry Kane in your team. But you know, especially what you were saying with Grealish about, you know, if he gets his City move, what if Kane gets his City move as well, mate? So you never know. But do you think you'll have Kane in your team for the start of the season?
I don't think I will. I think he'll stay. with us because they're talking about 150 to 200 mil, and I don't think that's going to be paid by anyone. United aren't going to pay it now. They got Sancho, and obviously Varane might be on the way, and I just can't see City paying it if they know, someone like Haaland could, potentially be up for grabs for that type of fee. So probably not going to be in there at the start for me. I'm thinking if I'm going to put a Spurs player in early on, I'm probably looking more towards your Dele Alli's, or if he gets back in the side, or maybe Son. But no, not Kane at the start, and I hope it doesn't punish me. But yeah, just can't quite fit him in at the moment with Salah, and then the money in reserve. I'm thinking about maybe putting it into Bruno anyway.
Yeah, and just quickly before I ask you another question, just a quick shout out to everyone that's watching along live now. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Guru and Jack and Ollie's team and everything throughout the podcast, and maybe we'll reply to your comment and have a little chat with you. But Matt, Trent Alexander-Arnold, past 2 seasons in Fantasy League, he's just been absolutely brilliant. He takes set pieces, takes free kicks, corners, all of them. So is he one that you think a lot of people should be looking at as well, even though he's as premium as defenders get, isn't he, in FPL? But do you think he's one that everyone should be considering?
Yeah, I think either him or Robertson, either one. Obviously Robertson, you save that 0.5, but yeah, Trent, you've got like the free kicks. He can hit a ball, potential to score. Get assist as well, and yeah, I'm thinking about just putting that money into him. I think is probably worth it. It's obviously a bit of a risk, but I think if you've got the money, then get him in.
Yeah, and do you think the same for Ben Chilwell as well? He had a really good season. Obviously, got his transfer to Chelsea last season. He sort of played, as more of a wing back when Thomas Tuchel came in. So, do you think he's one that people should be looking at as well?
Look, if we get the intel that he's going to start over Alonso, then I think, he's definitely worth it because of how good he was last season. But yeah, at the moment, it's all about if he gets the start for Alonso. But again, if you're looking at Chelsea, you've also got James as an alternative to Chilwell as well. So definitely keep an eye on both of their fullbacks.
Yeah, and as I've said for both Jack and Ollie, it's a brilliant draft, mate. My favourite one so far, just because of that man up top with the little 4 on his crest at the top of his shirt. But it's a really nice draft team, mate. And I'm definitely, as I've said with all of them so far, Pulisic is one that I hadn't even considered so far. When we get onto my team, you'll see that I've got Kai Havertz, so maybe he's one that I need to look at switching out. But move on to your team now, Statman Dave, and as we mentioned, having to isolate gives you a lot of free time, a lot of time to be thinking about which players to get in for your fantasy team, who not to get, check the fixtures, stuff like that. So this is your team, as we can see on screen there, but just take us through it, mate.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I haven't spent a huge amount of time on it yet. I think I've probably spent 10 minutes or so picking the initial squad, and to be honest, it's quite similar to the way I finished last season. So I'll tend to look at it a bit more closely in the next couple of weeks, especially once a few more transfers have happened and that sort of thing. But I've gone for a fairly sort of even and safe squad to start with, and then I'll sort of pick and choose from there. Probably look for some bargain options to potentially get a few more premiums in. I think at the moment, probably looking to swap out Guaita for Fabianski. I think Fabianski's probably got some better fixtures to start the season, and potentially as that, having 2 decent keepers that I can swap in and out depending on fixtures. I think at the moment, Kane's my only sort of premium at the moment, but I'm not sure whether he's going to stay or not for now. But probably De Bruyne is actually someone I'm surprised no one's mentioned yet. I'm probably looking to potentially get him into the midfield. I don't really have any premium midfielders at the moment, but potentially looking at getting him in, and hopefully, he'll have a full season where he can sort of get back to what he's capable of doing. And yeah, so far probably defenders. I haven't gone too high end in the defenders at the moment, so no, haven't got any of the Liverpool or Chelsea more expensive ones at the moment, but may look to bring them in at some point. But yeah, we'll definitely be looking closely at some of the transfers that are coming in and some of the promoted championship players to sort of get some more budget in to do some more upgrades.
Yeah, perfect. It's a really different team, but that's what you got to do in Fantasy League. It's the first Gundogan that we've seen. I didn't even mention that with Matt as well. I can't believe he's got a fantasy team with no Gundogan and no Kane. That is illegal, I've decided. But do you think Gundogan, if you're not going with De Bruyne, do you think Gundogan's the one to go with from that City midfield?
Yeah, quite possibly. Look, City's hard, obviously, because they tend to rotate everyone a fair bit. So, I think so long as you've sort of got a midfielder on the bench that you can cover for him. But I think, based on his sort of form in the first sort of 2/3 or 3/4 of the season last year, if he can do that again, then I think at his price, he's definitely worth having in there, because I think he's 7.5 million or something. So he's definitely value for the returns that he gives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the man in midfield there, Stuart Dallas, in the little white strip with the blue crest on, is he one that you think a lot of people are maybe sleeping on this season? I think a lot of people that I've heard are going to just, plonk him on their bench. And, when Leeds have got a favourable fixture, he can pop on for a little bit, because he's fairly cheap, 5.5 million. Do you think, he's obviously a midfielder this year, so he won't get the clean sheet points, but do you think he's one that more people should be looking at as well?
Yeah, look, possibly. I think, maybe, and I'll probably do the same thing, where I'll be sort of keeping a close eye on him in the first few weeks, and, whether he starts or not, or he might be that one that sort of can come in and out depending on, who else, what other fixtures I've got. Like my formation tends to change from week to week depending on sort of especially I sort of look at my defenders first and see how many sort of clean sheet options I've got there. And, if there's not a whole lot of clean sheet options, then look to sort of add in that extra midfielder. Depending on, if I've got sort of 2 or 3 or 4 guys that could potentially get clean sheet points.
Yeah, and as we can see on the screen there, we've got a comment from Luke. He says, I can't see Jorginho there. Penalty shooter, definitely to have in the team. But if you've got Jorginho on your team, mate, you've got to have Pickford in there, and he's the one that's stopping him. So
Luke has come off our Facebook group. He's a massive Italian fan. He's a massive Italian.
I talked him up in the Euros, and he didn't really return for anyone, did he? So I'll be steering clear of that one, I think, at the moment.
Yeah,
just need Luca to put his banner where it is and enter the fantasy league. So I don't think he came in last week. Yeah, he does love to watch us, but not comment.
Oh, keep commenting, mate, because that sort of stuff makes us laugh and a little bit cry on the inside because of the Euros. But we're past that now, and it's about fantasy. And then just one last question, Dave. We'll move to your goalkeeper, Emi Martinez. Just how good he was last season, how good he was for Argentina in the Copa America as well. Do you think he's one that people should be looking at? 5.5 million. You've got the likes of Alisson, Edouard Mendy, Edison that are more expensive than him. So do you think he's not cheap, but he's definitely the cheaper option of the premium goalkeepers?
Oh, look, I think I was looking at it before. He was probably the first one I picked. I think he scored 20 or 30 more points than those other goalkeepers last season, and he's cheaper than them. So I think you're going to get plenty of save points. He's in a decent side, so there's chances for plenty of clean sheets, I suppose. And I think he's a no-brainer to have, and he's cheap enough that potentially, like what I've done, where I'll have 2 sort of decent keepers that I can swap in and out depending on who they're due to play. If they are going to be playing one of the top sides, then potentially I'd look to bring in the Guaida or Fabianski or whoever I have as that second keeper, on those games.
Yeah, and as I've said, for everyone, a really nice teammate, and a lot of differentials in there, ones that we haven't really seen before, the likes of Dallas, Greenwood, Lingard, all popping up there. So it's really nice to see. But the second last team that we've got today is from me. I'll admit it, I haven't really looked at it for too long. Similarly to Matt, it was sort of just a fairly instant draft, and then popped on every now and then. You just load the app up, look at transfers, look at the players, just scroll through a little bit, and sort of have a little look. But still on my vacation from Euro Fantasy, so just in my off season at the minute. And then from now on, I guess it's starting with the pre-season, getting into it. So like everyone, Sanchez and Lamptey. I think Lamptey, he tore my team to shreds last season in the game that he played, and I haven't forgotten him ever since. So if he can, even replicate even half of that, then he'll be getting a lot of goals and a lot of assists this season for Brighton. And I know he scored. I can't remember if the goal was disallowed or not, Matt, but I think he scored against your team as well, didn't he? He scored against Spurs.
Lamptey, yeah, he did actually. That was the disallowed goal.
Yeah, I thought
actually,
it was.
Maybe it was the goal that counted. Actually, sorry, yeah, it was the one that counted. There was a disallowed goal in the game, but Lamptey, his one counted. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
Can I just say quickly, mate? I'm glad you haven't spent too long on that team, mate, because that team is absolutely horrendous, mate. If you'd have spent hours talking about that, I'd have been questioning your FPL manager pedigree, mate. What are you doing with Kai Havertz in midfield? What are you doing with Kai
Havertz,
Havertz in midfield?
mate, he was awesome at the end of last season. I think he was one that I've is a bit not a differential, but he's not the standard player that you're going to get in midfield. 8.5 million, I think fairly decent. He's playing as a striker for Chelsea, and he's put in midfield. We love those sort of gems that play out a position like Dallas, Lundstrom, those sort of people. So I'm quite surprised you said that about Kai Havertz, Ollie. I mentioned
I'm taking
him
the
before.
Mickey. I'm trying to find somewhere to criticise, and it's hard to say this, but your team is very hard to criticise. I don't like to say that because it's a good team. I'm just trying to pick something out of nothing.
No, I can understand it. I think Matt made the really good point that Pulisic, he is cheaper. He's definitely got the ability, similar ability to Havertz to get points and that sort of stuff. And Pulisic was one that I had in my draft team for a lot of last season as well. But I've got a lot of faith in Havertz this season, I think. So I'm expecting big things from him. He did a little bit at the Euros as well, so he sort of caught my eye, and I think he's going to do quite well. And I've gone with him. And then in the midfield with him, we've got Grealish. Similarly to Matt, if he gets his City move and then he starts, performing in the first couple of weeks, he's probably more likely to rise than if he's still at Villa. I think, especially if he's starting quite regularly for City, he'll increase in price quite a bit. So he's probably the one in my team that I'm not too sure about. And, he's going to be coming back from the Euros soon. So how fit he's going to be, we're not really sure, but Fernandes and Salah, everyone have got them as well. So you've got to have them in your team. I think Salah and Fernandes, two of the highest point scorers last season in FPL. So they're going to do it again this season. So I think definitely you've got to have them. And we've spoken a lot about Luca Dean on the podcast so far. And as a Newcastle fan, I'm quite a big fan of Rafa Benitez. So I've actually got quite high hopes for Everton this season, as much as it pains me and the man at the bottom of the screen right now to say I think they're actually going to do quite well. So I've gone with him and Calvert-Lewin. So Rafa turned Rondon into a 12-goal a season striker. So he's going to do similar things to Calvert-Lewin, I think. So it's going to be an interesting one. And then partnering Calvert-Lewin to wrap up the team is Ollie Watkins. And I know Matt's a massive fan of Ollie Watkins last season. He found himself so unlucky. He should have had so many more goals than what he did. He hit the woodwork so many times and was just extremely unlucky. So, in that sort of Villa team, with Buendia, they've strengthened a little bit, and with Grealish around, it's always going to be a striker's dream. He puts it on a plate for you and that sort of stuff. So that's my starting 11. And on the bench, we've got Guaita, Fofana, Gilmore, and Obafemi. It's pretty standard. Not really expecting too much off the bench there. I'm sort of tossing up, Matt, and I've got a question for you. Do you think it's important for people to start the season with a really good 15-man squad, or do you think maybe that's what you sort of build to after your wild card or stuff like that? What's your sort of thoughts on it, mate?
Yeah, no, not for me. I think maybe have one sub in reserve, but I'd be putting all the money into the lineup because you've got a wild card. So I personally like to just put as much as I can in the lineup early on, and then wait for the wild card if I need to sort of build a squad. I guess with COVID, it does change it a little bit, but if it does get controlled over in England and stuff, then I'd say now put the money into the lineup and set and forget.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only do we have to keep up with all the football news, we've got to keep up with the pandemic as well, because obviously there's still the chance that games get cancelled and that sort of stuff. And with fans back in, you never really know what's going to happen. So it's probably going to definitely start with one of those seasons similarly to last, but fingers crossed we're not seeing any of those triple game weeks that Man United had. I hope to never see one of them again in my life. But as we can see, Reedy's joined us on the podcast, our UK correspondent. He loves Fantasy Premier League just as much as he loves the Euros, and he can't talk up Mbappe on the podcast, but I feel like he's going to have a little bit to say about a couple of players that he likes. So how are you doing, Chris?
Not doing too bad, though. Thanks, mate. After seeing your team there, I'm a little bit sort of like lost for words at how poor the selections were. Calvert-Lewin and the likes of them guys. But we'll see come start of the fantasy season, really. So I'm doing good. I've got my little draft up, first draft type of thing. So we'll see how we get on. I'm sure there'll be some changes before the start of the season.
Absolutely. We know that, you more than love a transfer, mate. So it'll be interesting. But, a lot of different players. Again, it's nice to see some variety in all of our teams. Mason Mount, Harvey Barnes off the bat there that I can see, and Canate. So just take us through your team, mate.
Yeah, so I've got Allison. I've gone for Allison in net. Just think he's obviously a brilliant keeper, top keeper. Got that goal at the end of the season, which pretty much got us into the Champions League, if you like. And I wanted to get someone who's going to basically get game time, week in, week out. Is going to start. So he is a high price keeper. So I get that I could potentially put that elsewhere. But yeah, so I went for Allison in net. Good fixture, obviously, to start as well. Against Norwich. So hopefully we can keep a clean sheet there. Kufal against Newcastle. He's obviously showed what he's about last season with his assist for West Ham, and how good he was getting down that flank and stuff. So I know they've obviously got Newcastle first game, which we'll talk about Newcastle in a moment and what I think they might be up to for the season. But yeah, went for Kufal there. Canate. Now he's a cheaper option to the likes of Van Dijk, 6.5 million for Van Dijk, and your Liverpool assets, the likes of Trent and Robbo. We know that they're the highest costing assets on the game, really. So I went for Canate. Whether he'll get a start or not, I don't know. Gomez could be in contention. Matip might start. I've just got him in there for now, really. I suppose as more of a as like a little just selected option, so my midfield can maybe be better. I can benefit from that aspect of things. And then Shaw, as most people's teams have reflected, really, people have got Luke Shaw in there after the Euros that he had. It'll almost be one of those. It'd be silly not to get him in. So yeah, I've put him in. Midfield, I've tried to vary it, really. It's difficult this year, as we've got like the likes of Salah, so high priced, Fernandes, another one. So many midfielders, with the cost and the value of them, they're costing so much. So you have got to try and look maybe at other options this year. So I've gone for Harvey Barnes. He got that injury last season. He was unlucky to get that, and he was absolutely flying at one point for Leicester, assists and goals and stuff like that. So I expect him to kind of pick up where he left off. And against Wolves as well, we've lost the manager. They've lost the likes of Patricio in goal. So basically, we'll see how that pans out. But Fernandes, same again, fixtures and stuff like that. A little visitor here with me, guys. So if you want to get involved in the pod, what's up, mate? We're live. We're live. You've got to get yourself going. You're gonna miss school. It's all about education, so you can be good on fancy Premier League when you're older, mate.
That's the stuff you don't learn in school, Reedy. That's the stuff you don't learn.
Yeah. So I went with Fernandes. As the boys have alluded to, fancy fixtures are looking good for Man United. Mason Mount. Now, it's another one. Palace, new manager. Vieira is unexperienced in the Premier League. And Mount was quite good last season for Chelsea, getting assists and things like that. And he sort of seems to benefit in that number 10 role for Chelsea. Do you wanna go out, mate, just while we're doing this? Yeah? Yeah, don't worry. I'll slip you £20 later. Don't worry about that. Right. Come on, mate. Yeah, boys. So, Jota I've gone for as well for Liverpool. Now, most people have gone for Salah. Dad? Yeah. Don't worry about it, mate. Don't worry.
Can the little man give us any advice? Does he have any favourite players that we should be getting in?
He hasn't got a clue who what's what. I mean, so unfortunately, not. I'll try and train him up for the next couple of years. Hopefully, he can get involved. But yeah, so like I say, Jota. We've got Jota in there. He's great for Liverpool last season up until he got an injury. And as I said there, Salah's like the obvious choice for most people, and his record against Norwich, like you say, boys, it's undeniable. So that's something that I might tinker with. I might go for Salah, but it all depends on really how much I've got left in the bank and who I could maybe take out. Jack Grealish, as you mentioned in your team, there, Statman, he's a top player. Last season he was just on form. He was, it was a shame to not see him play as much or feature as much in the Euros. Obviously, we wanted him to get involved, and he did actually come on and do well for us. But Jack Grealish, really, he looks like he's staying at Villa. I think even if he moved to someone else, he'd be the same type of player anyway. And then strikers going off basically value really for strikers, because there's an abundance of them. this season in FPL. Abundance of strikers to choose from. Aubameyang's had a position change. He's gone back to striker. You've got your likes of your favourites in there, Harry Kane and all the rest of it. But these strikers, they're obviously going to cost you a lot of money again. A lot of value to look for really this season in strikers. So you Ollie Watkins and your Iheanacho, two players who bagged a lot of goals last season. For the price that they're at, it's hard to ignore them. So I've gone for those. And my bench really is self-explanatory, really. 3 Brighton players in there. You've got Lamptey, Dunk, Sanchez. And these guys obviously like to rack up a few points. Lamptey was looking good up until he got an injury. But his value's just, you can't ignore it, really. And then last but not least, that man, your man, St. Maximan. He's been moved up to a striker. So, it's nice to see that, really, to be honest with you, because he's a guy who kind of gets the goals for Newcastle when he does manage to play. He's that player who brings that excitement, that flair for Newcastle. So I couldn't ignore it, really. I think to have him in there, it's just got to be done, really. That does kind of counteract what I've done with my defence, gone for Kufal there, really. So you never know. We'll see what happens with that one coming at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, we've got 2 new subscribers. I think it was Josh C and Jody H. They've joined our paid mini league as well, as you can see on the screen there. And you can too at the website that's on screen there, www.e-sportslive.com.au/FPL Addicts. But really delighted with that pick, Reedy. That's the first St. Maximin we've seen, including from myself. So is he 5.5 or is he 6 million or is he more than that?
I think he's about 6.5, I want to say. I think he's about 6.5. And it's difficult to pick someone out, really, from a forward aspect. You've got Tony, who I know you guys have touched upon, who's coming up from the Championship. He's got something to prove, something similar to Watkins, that price tag that he had on his head, basically when he made the move to Villa. And people were kind of like, unknown, what is he going to do? He's done it in the Championship, but is he good enough for the Premier League? And he did. He backed it up and delivered. So it could be the same for Tony. You never know. It could be dark horse in terms of a striker pick. But yeah, so gone for St. Maximan, and you will see what happens with him. I like him as a player. I think, if he gets the start, he gets your goals or he brings you assists. Simple as that.
Yeah, he's a player that really just raises the intensity and the level that the team play at. So if he can stay fit, he's definitely going to be one to watch. And as I said, a lot of different players in there. Massive fan of the Canate pick. Do you think he's going to be quite integral to Liverpool's season?
Yeah. I think we've not messed about with that one. We've kind of got a centre back early on. Matip's made of crisps anyway. We know that. He'll be injured probably. I think we've got a pre-season friendly coming up, and Matip's meant to be in the lineup. Hey,
2 half-an-hour games last night. Liverpool.
Oh, was it right? Okay, yeah, there we go. So I expect Matip to be injured. Don't want him to. I was going to say
expect the injury news from Matip in about 5 minutes.
It's pending. It's pending. It'll go from a green arrow to a red quite quickly, I'm sure enough. But yeah, Canate in there, excited by what he's going to bring, the physical aspect. He's been playing at a top club like Leipzig. They kind of have lost both of the centre backs. One of them's gone to Bayern. And he picked Liverpool, or we picked him, however you want to put it. But whether he'll get the start, I don't know. As I've said, and he's kind of an insurance thing more than anything, really, for the price to be able to buy other assets in your team. Whether he'll be there at the beginning of the season, I'm not sure. So, but for now, if he's going to get a start, I might even keep him in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really nice team, and that wraps up all of our teams. But before we move on to just sort of going through our sort of choices in each sort of category, each position for who we think we should be going with, I've just got a question for you, Matt. We've seen a real array of different formations by different people. There's a couple of 4-4-2s, 4-3-3s. I think there was a 3-5-2 there from Reedy as well. So do you sort of have a select favourite formation that you think people should be going with this season? I know you obviously lined up with the 4-4-2, the Mike Bassett, as Ollie calls it, but do you think that's the way that people should be going?
Look, I actually think the either a 4-3-3. So you've got the 3 strikers, because there's so many good striker options this season. So I think if you can get 3 strikers in, probably the preference. So maybe a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3. If you're going to go 4-3-3, then I'd say get as many fullbacks in as possible. and set piece taking defenders. But I'll probably say if you can get a 3 up front, it's probably the best so far in terms of the fact that there's just so many good mid-range 7.5 million strikers. You've got Wilson, Watkins, Calvert-Lewin's 8 million, Antonio 7.5, Tony 6.5, Iheanacho 7.5.
Raul Jimenez as well, returning from injury.
Raul Jimenez returning, yeah. So I think if you can get 3 up front, then that's probably going to be a bit of a template and kind of the way to go. But I've not got that in my team just yet. But I've put a lot of money into my defence and my fullback. So I'm kind of hoping that those fullbacks can act as, an extra midfielder because, they do score goals, they do get forward. So that's kind of my strategy. But I think the overall, safe bet and the template kind of stuff's probably going to be, to get 3 strikers on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dave, you spoke a lot and you said that you switch your formation quite often. So do you think it's maybe more important to have a 15-man squad and then just sort of rotate given the fixtures on each week for your formation? He's muted.
Sorry, boys. Yeah, that's certainly the way I sort of played it, especially towards the end of the season. Once I was sort of starting to climb up the table a little bit, I think you've got to be flexible depending on who's playing who and that sort of thing. I certainly won't be planning to have a set formation or anything like that, but it might sort of factor in a little bit onto sort of how much money I put into a few premiums. But yeah, generally, I think I've got to try and be a bit flexible depending on, load up when you've got guys playing the bottom sides and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's a really good point. There's a lot of different opinions on it. So it's going to be interesting. But let us know what formation you're going with for the first game week, especially if you're watching a live or if you're commenting down below as well. But we'll move on now to the final section of the preview podcast. We've taken up a fair bit of time talking about our teams, giving you all the insight. But it'll just be sort of a recap this, I feel. But we'll start with goalkeepers and we'll start with you, Matt. Not a cheap pick and not a premium pick, but just a pick that you think people should be going with to start the season. Who's your choice for a goalkeeper?
I'm actually liking Dean Henderson now if he retains the number 1 at Man United for 5 million. Jack spoke about that chunk of games that they have as well, and some good early fixtures. I think Dean Henderson at 5 million is a really good shout. I'm surprised he's not in anyone's teams.
Yeah, it's a really good point you raise. Honestly, it hadn't even crossed my mind before you mentioned it because he's, he was favoured over De Gea for a large part of last season as well. So it's an interesting one. But do you sort of agree with what he said there, Ollie, or do you think that a lot of people gone with Robert Sanchez? Do you think he's the pick for FPL to start the season?
I just touched on Henderson very quickly. It's just the clarity of whether he'll start or not that's sort of putting a lot of managers off. I think if he does get the gloves, it's hard to turn him down. In terms of Sanchez, I think he'll start.
There you go, Matt. Arsenal and Spurs are the definition of finished tin.
I'm happy to be interrupted for a comment like that. I'm happy to be interrupted.
Better tell him
not
to put any of them in his FPL side then.
That's the best comment we've ever got. That wins for today. Sorry, Ollie. Keep going, mate.
No, I'm more than happy to be interrupted with a comment like that. I'm a Rovers fan, so I can't really add anything to that discussion. But anyway, back to FPL. I think if you're looking for a goalkeeper that's maybe a bit of a differential, Melier from Leeds. I know their first 3 aren't the easiest, but after that, it's looking pretty green. So I'd go with him. But there are a lot of goalkeepers you can pick who are quite cheap.
Yeah, there's a lot of good goalkeepers on show that you can go with. But we'll move on to the defenders now. And Dave, there was a lot of Luke Shaw's, a lot of Tyreek Lamptey's in teams, but who do you think's the main pick for a defender?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably John Stones. I think, he was streets ahead of everyone else as far as points per game. So he had 5.8 points per game last season, which was, I think, like 0.7 above every other player. So I think he's certainly your most reliable, certainly for clean sheets. And he's probably plays as many games as anything. Obviously, Pep Roulette can be a bit of an issue. So I suppose so long as you've got someone to cover for him if he does get rotated out at the last second. But yeah, he'd certainly be my option, and he's a lot better value than some of the Liverpool and the Chelsea assets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you sort of agree with him there, Reedy, or do you think Konate is the favoured centre half for this season?
I don't know. I think it's got to be a fullback for me. I know Stones did pop up with a few goals last season. I think the Pep rotation surprised a few people at times. But I don't know. I would go with a fullback. I don't know if Canales is going to get a few goals at all. You never know. But I don't know. I'd say it's a fullback for me. I don't know who I'd go for. Maybe it's in between Shaw, Digne, or the likes of Trent. Really, I think Trent, even though he's going to cost a lot, he's your man really for set pieces and getting assists, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people in the midfield that are going to be getting your points, Matt. But if we just go to you ever so quickly, midfielder that's not Mohamed Salah or Bruno Fernandes, who are you going to go with?
Havertz.
Ooh, he likes the Havertz pick.
Yeah, 8.5 million. I think he got that goal in the Champions League final. Looked good for Germany. Started to really settle. There was that performance against Palace towards the end of the season where he got, a double-digit score for Chelsea. I think, false nine. You can't really look past him for 8.5 million.
No, absolutely not. And then Ollie, if you had to pick another midfielder that isn't Elise, Bruno Fernandes, Mohamed Salah, or Kai Havertz, who would you go with?
I'll go with Jackie Grealish.
Yeah, really good call, mate. Do you think he's going to, continue his form before he got injured from last season?
He'll stay at Villa and he'll be class. That's what I reckon.
It's a good prediction, so I can't wait for when the season starts, when he's off in sunny Manchester, bagging it in for Pep Guardiola's side.
Sunny. Come on, lad.
Got to make it sound nice to sort of persuade him. Anything's an upgrade from Birmingham, mate, so it doesn't really matter too much. But if we move on to the forwards, and you spoke a lot about the forwards, Dave, and how many there are, and around the 7.5 and stuff like that. But you're a massive fan of Kelechi Iheanacho. Is he one that you think people should be looking at a little bit more?
Yeah, certainly Iheanacho. I think probably just ahead of him, I would say, is probably Bamford. Even though he's not necessarily from one of the top clubs, I think his returns last season sort of warrant him being a pretty good value at 8 mil. And for me, him and Iheanacho might be a little bit interchangeable for me as my third, depending on the fixture. So sometimes they might get in, but if they're playing against some of those top 4 or 5 sides, then maybe I might look to rotate them out.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the last thing for the podcast today, Reedy, you get to pick one more forward. Lucky last. Who else would you go with?
I will go with Harry Kane. I don't know if anyone's got them in a team. I'm not sure you guys had him. Maybe one of you, I think. But Harry Kane, really proven.
Yeah, I've got him.
Yeah, you got him as well. Proven every season. I think Spurs might struggle this year. I don't like to say that, Guru, but it just depends really if they make any signings, if Kane leaves or not. Things are up in the air, as we know. But Harry Kane, really, I expect him to deliver as he always does, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what he does, and this is exactly what we do as well as we wrap up the podcast today. We hope you've enjoyed the first full podcast of us all being back today. Just a reminder, for the free mini code, it is 1KSRYW, and the paid mini, go to www.e-sportslive.com.au/FPL Addicts to join our leagues. Please get involved. It was brilliant for the Euros, and we hope to do the same for the game that we all love, FPL, this season. And may all your FPL pre-season dreams come true. Take care, stay safe. Bye for now.